For the discussion this afternoon, our topic will be on Connect with your learners, building rapport with your online learners. Before we begin, kindly take note of the following reminders. Make sure you are registered to the webinar to have your e-certificate of participation. Visit certificate.vibalgroup.com to generate your proof of attendance. Place your question in the comment box allotted during the session and they will be addressed by a speaker later on. Share the video using hashtag LearnAs1PH as our official hashtag to our VIBAL webinars. Experience learning, Kabibal. And now to proceed with our webinar this afternoon, it is my pleasure to introduce to you our distinguished speaker for today. Mr. Joram Team Corcuera is a graduate of Bachelor in Secondary Education, major in English at the Philippine Normal University in 2011. He obtained his Master of Arts, major in Communication degree at the Ateneo de Manila University. Currently, he is taking his degree of Doctor of Philosophy, major in English Language Studies at the University of Santo Tomas. He has been a teacher for almost a decade and has already taught English, literature, public speaking, and research classes. He also represented the Philippines in various international research conferences about education and communication. He has been delivering CPA training sessions and teacher seminars across the country for more than 3 years. He is also into journalism as he has already experienced handling a number of student publications in various schools and universities, including San Beda University and University of Santo Tomas. At present, he is working as a faculty member at the University of Santo Tomas Junior High School, where he teaches communication arts and journalism courses. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Mr. Joram Team Carquera.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Michelle, for that introduction. Maraming salamat po to all our viewers today, this afternoon. Sa pong magandang hapon sa inyong lahat. I hope you would be able to learn, of course, new things, new insights that you can use, of course, to make education better. Especially the system, of course, of education that we have here in the Philippines. So on that note, allow me to share with you the slides that I actually prepared for our webinar this afternoon. Okay. There you go. So I hope you're able to see the slides that I actually prepared for you. So again, the title of our webinar today is Connect with Your Learners, Building Rapport with Your Online Learners. All right. So, okay. Let me see. All right. Okay. So, all right. So there you go. So following the emergence of the 2019 coronavirus pandemic, of course, that poses endless challenges on every aspect of our lives. Educational sectors, of course, here in the Philippines and in the entire world, announced the shift of instruction from the traditional setup to the remote learning setup. In our country, of course, many months ago, the Department of Education made an announcement that they will be, of course, implementing distance learning. That's why right now, some of the private schools that have already opened their classes are already implementing either distance learning in form of online classes or in form of giving, of course, modules. However, I'm sure that the challenges that we're facing right now because of the pandemic does not end with regards to how we're going to communicate with our students, di ba? Ako po, personally, based on my experience on teaching online, one of the hardest things, okay, that I actually experience every now and then would have to be, how would I establish a good connection with my students? Diba? Unlike in a face-to-face setup, this is not a problem. Pero in an online distance learning setup, this is indeed a problem. And of course, this poses a lot of challenges. So on that note, allow me to present to you our objectives. So one, of course, it is to be able to identify best practices on how to connect with students online. Second, of course, it's for us to be able to appreciate the importance of rapport, the importance of having a good connection, a good relationship, of course, with our students, and providing quality education for them. And number three, of course, is to be able to apply various techniques to establish a better connection with students virtually. All right, so of course, now that I'm done presenting the objectives, isa lang po ang tanong ko, are we ready? Diba? I hope we're ready for this one. So if we're ready, then let me start, of course, to dig deeper. So in every webinar, in every teacher training, in every teacher seminar, in every CBD training that I actually conducted before, I always start with what I call the quote of the day. And today's quote comes from Tony Robbins. Sabi niya, rapport is the ability to enter someone else's world, to make him feel that you understand him and that you have a strong common bond. Indeed, I think you have to agree with me, or I think I'd like to believe that you will be agreeing with me if I say that rapport is an important ingredient to academic success, especially in distance education. Without rapport, definitely distance education, be it modular or online, would be more challenging, would be more harder, and possibly it could actually result to failure. So this one is going to be our focus in our today's discussion. But before we try to dig deeper about rapport, let us try to talk first about communication. When I talk about, of course, communication, nowadays, ito yan, di ba? Right? Kumbaga, kung isipin natin tayo si Blue, si Orange si students, or vice versa, we communicate, of course, through what? Through, of course, the use of technology. That's why in the picture you would be seeing their laptops, you would be seeing their different applications, and then the like, because this is our way of communicating with our students. But we'll talk about communication. What is communication, and how are we going to define it? Communication is the act of imparting and informing people, especially with regards to news. Diba? So in other words, communication does not only happen whenever we try to talk about a specific object or a specific thing, a specific subject. Communication takes place whenever we read newspapers, be it online or be it a hard copy of a newspaper. Communication also refers to the science and the practice of transmitting and passing information. And there's no doubt that in the society nowadays, communication indeed plays a vital role. Okay? Right now, of course, that we're facing a health crisis, its role is much more significant than ever, right? So it must be clear for us teachers how we can use it not only in trying to combat the disease, but also in trying to offer quality education amidst the pandemic, because this is the only way that we can actually of course make it happen, diba? Our job as teachers is not only to teach, but is to ensure that of course our students are learning from us. It's really to give them the quality education that they truly deserve. And in order for us to be able to do this, it is very important for us to understand what communication is, and of course the role of communication in today's society. Furthermore, when we talk about communication, of course, we deal with human communication. It is a purposeful interaction between at least two persons, principally through the use of verbal and non-verbal symbols. So, in other words, sa sinabi natin communication, alam naman natin to, di ba? Verbal, of course, with the use of our voice. Non-verbal, we communicate with our hands, with our faces, and of course, gestures, body language, and then the like. But when we talk about communication, human communication, siguro yung iba magtatanong pa rin. Today's topic is about education, but why are you trying to focus with regards to communication? Because the question is communication connected to education? And if yes, what is its relevance for teachers, especially in a virtual learning environment? Okay? My dear teachers, my dear formators, okay, we have to understand that all of us teachers, educators, if there's one thing that is constant in this world, di ba? We are, of course, constantly imparting new knowledge and transmitting information to our students, be it face-to-face and online. Di ba? When we do, for example, online learning, every day we give them new information. Every day we present things that they do not know, and they would learn from this one. If it's modular, the moment that the students will open the module, the moment that the students will answer the module, will study the module, it is an act of still transmitting information from the module, which of course was created by the teachers. So in other words, this is something that we do not often, but this is something that we do all the time. Okay? So the question now is, in 2020, ngayong panahon po ng 2020, ano bang role nito? Is it really because it's COVID-19 that we're shifting to online learning? Or before the COVID-19 pandemic, meron na bang tinatawag na changes in the field of education? The truth here is that prior to the COVID-19 pandemic, okay, the use of technology in the field of education has truly spread like a wildfire. So it is already indeed prevalent. In fact, in a study conducted by Hootsuite, okay, noong January 2020, they found out that the total population, of course, is around 7.75 billion. And out of the 7.75 billion, 5.19 billion are unique mobile phone users, 4.54 billion are internet users, and 3.80 billion are social media users who are very active, of course, posting, okay, updating their various social media accounts. Now, looking at this data, just like what I told you, this is before COVID-19 pandemic. And right now, diba, of course, we all know that in the new normal, uh, the new way of communication, of course, is always mediated communication, di ba? Not only students attend online classes, but also us, employees, we work from home, di ba? Of course, how? Through the use of internet. So indeed, baka itong number na to, baka na doble pa to, di ba? So this just shows us that even before the pandemic, okay, the way we communicate, okay, with other people already changed. Okay? It is indeed influenced already, of course, with the integration, with the use of technology. Okay? And speaking of technology, we must understand that in education, technology can be a life changer. It can also be a game changer, especially for kids who are both in school and out of school. Alam niyo po, ako po, I always believe that when we talk about technology in the field of education, hindi lang pwedeng as teachers, dapat as students as well. Okay? So its success, okay, would depend on how we use it as teachers, and on how they use it as students. As teachers, of course, we must understand that when we talk about online learning, when we talk about the use of technology, we must know how to use it. We must know, number one, how to use third-party applications, online applications that would be able, of course, to sustain their attention, make learning more interesting, erase boredom, get rid of boredom, and the like. We must be able to use, of course, the power of technology in terms of adding supplementary materials, okay, making the curriculum better, okay, and then the like. And for students, of course, dapat din they know how to use it the right way. Ako po, to be honest, right now I tried to interview some of the students, and then most of them would be telling, "Sir, the hardest part in online learning is not only about time management, but there are a lot of distractions." Why? Because the technology itself can serve as distraction, di ba? Yung social media, yung for example, yung uh, online games and then the like, they serve also as distractions, right? So in other words, if we want to ensure that technology would really help us attain academic success, dapat mapaliwanag din natin as teachers that it's not only, kumbaga, it does not only depend sa ating mga kamay. Dapat, of course, the students would also do their part, right? So right now, let us try to see some of the products of technology that we use often in the world nowadays, especially, of course, in the field of education. One, of course, definitely social media. 'Di ba? I think ako while browsing my Facebook feed, I would often see posts of other teachers telling na ang ginagamit nilang uh, learning management system is Facebook. Yung iba ginagamit other social media tools, right? Kasi di ba yung mga feature na rin, for example, na messenger room, and then the like, right? So, yung iba gumagamit ng email, iba gumagamit ng, for example, StreamYard, and then the like, iba gumagamit ng Zoom. So, in other words, of course, the use of this teleconferencing, video conferencing applications has been indeed, prevalent, talagang nakikita talaga siya. And same thing, of course, with the social media. Before the pandemic, ginagamit na rin to, di ba? For example, dissemination of information. May mga teachers na nagpapapost ng mga gawa ng bata sa social media. Okay? But of course, we have to understand that their grade must not be affected and must not be based on the number of likes from the number of comments that the students would be gaining from their social media posts. Right? So in other words, through social media, we learn a lot of things. We acquire new knowledge, of course. We develop our skills through the use of the internet. Okay? Second, of course, videos. Diba? Ito talagang lagi natin ito ginagamit. Right now, for example, This is a webinar, right? So this is of course being flashed. You are able to watch it of course through YouTube. Okay, a lot of teachers would be able to use of course other videos coming from other teachers, coming from other educators, from other formators, okay, in their own lessons as well. Okay, the students likewise would be able to use videos, even if these videos were not rewarded by the teachers, to try to make understand their lessons better. Third, of course, we also have here various websites, di ba? Instructional template posted in websites. For example, you want to know more about, kunwari, for example, about nouns, and you're going to research things about online. So definitely, itong mga bagay na to, magagamit natin to, of course, to ensure that, of course, our learning, okay, the education that we're giving to our students is indeed talagang quality education po talaga. Okay? So in other words, conclusion, everyone uses technology. Okay? Lahat po tayo gumagamit ng technology. And no wonder, right now, when I talk about communication, it's always mediated communication. Okay? So now let us try to look at communication, specifically mediated communication, on a deeper perspective. Okay? So communication, mediated communication occurs when some mechanical device is interposed between participants. So indeed, ito yung ginagamit natin lahat ngayon. Di ba? So tinatawag po natin doon is mediated communication. But right now, let us try to look at mediated communication and communication alone in a different perspective. Tignan natin yung, sorry, here. So, there we go. All right. So now, let us try to look at communication, okay, based on a framework provided by Cambridge University. Di ba sabi natin kanina, mediated communication ang pakikipag-usap natin sa mga estudyante right now. Di ba? Because of course, we cannot afford to go out and set schedules to meet them face-to-face. It would be too risky. It would be too dangerous, not only on our end, but also on the end of the teachers. Okay? So good communication skills, according to Cambridge University, were divided into 4 distinct but interlinked strands. Sabi nila, when we talk about communication, 1, physical, 2, linguistic, 3, cognitive, and 4, social and emotional. So we're going to try to understand these 4 different strands, okay, of course, used to show the framework when we're trying to look at communication. So let's start first with physical. So talk about the physical, it refers to how we or the speaker uses the language, facial expressions, and the voice. So ako po, whenever I teach, I always try my best to open my camera. Kasi, of course, non-verbal language, at least napo-project pa rin sa camera. May facial expression, may hand gestures, at least may body stance, may body language. Although it would not be as clear, of course, as the non-verbal expression expressed in face-to-face setup, at least in a way or another, may bibigay pa din ako sa mga bata because of course these things also help us deliver the message to our students, how we actually deliver our message to them, the way we speak, okay? Kumbaga, yung intonation natin, it would also affect, okay? How we pronounce the words would also affect, okay? Second, of course, would have to be linguistic, okay? Dito po sa linguistic, it's the speaker use of language, including their understanding of formality and rhetorical devices. Di ba sabi nga nila, when you're talking to students online, you must use the same words that you're using in a face-to-face classroom setup. Because other teachers would think, okay, so this one is a video, so since this one is a video, I should make it very formal. Ako po, to be honest, there's nothing wrong with being formal. But for me, if it's too formal, the students might think, I'm not comfortable with this kind of setup. Remember, the reason why we're conducting online classes is to make them feel the same way, of course, that they feel with the face-to-face classes. So we have to make them comfortable. Okay? And dapat malaman mo when to be too formal and when, of course, at least to be a bit casual, to at least use your humor, insert jokes, your wittiness from time to time, para at least, of course, the conversation would still be very entertaining. You would be able to sustain your attention and the like. Third, of course, would have to be the cognitive. So the cognitive refers to the content of a speaker, okay, what the speaker says, okay, and their ability to build on, challenge, question, and summarize others' ideas. Ako, for me, as teachers, sa apat na strands na binanggit ng Campus University, ito siguro yung kampante ako na lahat meron tayo. Why? Because I'd like to believe that all of us are knowledgeable, especially in terms of content. One, we cannot be teachers if we did not graduate from a 4-year degree course. We cannot be teachers, okay, lalo na sa public schools, if, of course, we do not have our licenses, right? And we cannot be teachers, of course, of the specific subjects that we're teaching if we did not spend rigorous training sessions only to become an expert with regards to that specific field, all right? And of course, the last one would have to be social and emotional. It refers to how well a speaker listens, includes others, and responds to the audience. Alam niyo po, my dear teachers, isang misconception when it comes to online learning, yung mga bagay na iniisip na parang, okay, online learning to, so I'll teach. Once I'm done teaching, the students will submit their work and that's it. That's wrong. When I talk about online learning, it involves communication. And communication should always be two-way. Hindi pwedeng nagbigay tayo ng video natin, panonoodin nila, and that's it. Mamaya, later, pag nag-discuss mo ko ng towards rapport, I would be focusing to those things. But you have to understand, my dear teachers, that online communication, online learning does not go that way. Okay? Online learning should still be two-way. So in other words, we have to listen to what they can say, and we have to process it. We have to respond to them, not only to address what they need, but also try to address their preferences. Okay? Put in mind that my dear teachers, okay, for us to call ourselves effective educators, we must always know how to become excellent communicators. Because if we cannot call ourselves excellent communicators, then we can never become effective communicators. So on that note, let us try to assess if you are already a good communicator or not. All right? So I have here with me specific questions, okay? And you're just going to answer with a yes or a no. So I hope, sana po may hawak tayong ballpen o papel, or if not, if you have your digital notebook, okay, you can type your answer, yes or no. Okay? So again, I call this activity, are you a good communicator? So again po, ulitin ko po just write yes if you are doing it already, if you possess that specific trait or practice, and no, of course, if not. All right, so let us start. Number 1, I am a good listener and I don't encounter difficulties in comprehending what is being asked from me. Again, let me read it. I am a good listener and I don't encounter difficulties in comprehending what is being asked from me. Is it a yes or is it a no? Sulat lang po natin dyan. Then mamaya po bibilangin natin. Number 2, my body language, eye contact, and hand gesture do not confuse my listeners or my audience. My body language, eye contact, and hand gesture do not confuse my listeners or my audience. Ito po yung tinatawag natin na non-verbal expressions. Number 3, my body stance and voice make me appear approachable. My body stance and voice tone make me appear approachable. O baka naman pag narinig ng bata yung boses natin, tumatakbo na sila. Automatic shutdown na yung computer. Alright, so those are the first 3 questions. Question number 4. I don't talk too much. I always try to convey my message in the shortest way possible. Okay? Again, I don't talk too much. I always try to convey my message in the shortest way possible. So is it a yes or is it a no? Sulat po natin then mamaya po bibilangin po natin. I'm looking at the chat box right now. Marami po naglalagay ng yes and no. But of course, we have to understand that we cannot assess ourselves based on a specific item. Kailangan po ito total po natin mamaya. Alright? Next, number 5. I make sure that my message is always delivered clearly and directly. I make sure that my message is always delivered clearly and directly, regardless if it's face-to-face, mediated communication, and then the like. Number 6, I have a friendly tone when dealing with other people. I have a friendly tone when dealing with other people. Number 7, I am always confident in interacting with others. I am always confident in interacting with others. Or minsan, andun ba yung hesitation? Ayoko, ikaw na lang kumausap, di ba? I know a lot of people na ganyan eh. Parang nahihiya silang makipag-usap, nahihiya silang magtanong. So, kayo po ba, do you also experience that? Or you're always confident whenever you're being asked to have an intellectual discourse or any form of discourse with others? Next, number 8, I am an open-minded person who is willing to enter any conversation with a flexible mind. Or tayo ba yung klase ng tao na pag nakipag-usap, okay, I have this kind of thinking, you cannot change it anymore. Okay? Again, let me read it. I am an open-minded person who is willing to enter any conversation with a flexible mind. Number 9, I respect the ideas of the minority. Or are we the kind of person who only refers to the opinion of the majority? Hindi pong whenever we're going to make a decision, anong opinion ng nakararami? Tapos doon na lang ba tayo palagi? Or you also try to listen to the ideas expressed by the minority. Again, I express the ideas of the minority. Number 10, I give feedback. Okay, I give feedback. Or kayo ba yung teachers na I'll just give it, you pass it, okay. The next time that you're going to see it, grades na lang po. Or you try your best to give feedback from time to time. Number 11, I pick the right medium when communicating with others. I pick the right medium when communicating with others. Number 12, I always do my best to respond in a positive manner. Proactive po ba lagi yung approach natin? Okay? So I always do my best to respond in a positive manner. Okay, so right now, ito po ang gagawin natin, my dear teachers. Ibilangin po natin yung number ng yes na sagot natin. And then I will give you the meaning behind it. Okay po, ulitin ko po. I'll give you 30 seconds. Let's count the number of yes that we have on our paper. So again, we have 12 questions. So the highest number of yes that's possible that you're going to have would be 12. And the lowest, of course, would be 0. All right? Okay, so nabilang na po ba natin? Ay, 15 seconds po. Okay. So now, for teachers who got 1 to 3, okay, or 0 to 3, ibig sabihin po nun, you still need improvement. There are still a lot of things that you have to improve with regards to your communication skills. Okay, so sabihin po, medyo marami tayong kailangan gawin para of course we can call ourselves effective communicators, because remember, our job as teachers demand us to be effective communicators, because just like what I told you earlier, we cannot be excellent educators if we do not know how to communicate effectively to our students, right? Now, those who got 4 to 6, if you got 4 to 6 po, it means that yes, you're good already, but unfortunately, you're not yet consistent. So if you're not yet consistent, then there are still a lot of things that you have to improve. There are still a lot of things that you have to develop, all right? So at least 4 to 6, may potential na. Kumbaga, kailangan lang talaga natin mas ma-enhance pa, all right? Next po would have to be 7 to 9. For 7 to 9, it means that you are already effective. However, of course, even if you can call yourselves effective communicators, there are still things that you can still improve. Okay? There are still things that you can still enhance and develop. So ito yung mga bagay, of course, that you would be learning through practice. Especially right now, mediated communication. This is something new for all of us. Lalo na is a full online communication, di ba? Education, distance learning specifically. And if you got 10 to 12, it means you are already an excellent communicator. So if you got 10 to 12, 2 thumbs up po para sa inyo, because it means that you're on the right track, and of course your students are very lucky to have you. Okay, but don't worry, because if your score is below 10, that does not mean that you cannot be the best teachers for your students. That only means that you have to try harder, you have to work harder to become the best teachers, of course, in the eyes of your students. Remember, my dear teachers, The most basic of all human needs is the need to understand and be understood. And the best way to understand people is to listen to them. So ito po yung sinasabi ko kanina. Okay? One of the things, of course, mentioned earlier in our game, in our mini activity, is that communication is never one way. It's always two way. So you always have to listen to your students. You always have to listen to what they can actually say. Okay? So hindi pwedeng tayong teachers lang ang magsasalita at tayong teachers lang ang masusunod. We always have to listen to what our students will say for us to be able, of course, to establish a better relationship with them. Okay? That's, of course, process of the communication. Right? So imagine, parang tayo to, di ba? Okay? Parang tayo to. Isa lang tayo pero ang dami-dami nating kausap. Especially with regards to oral mediated communication. Ako nga ngayon, sabi ko isang bagay na dati, pag binubuksan ko laging walang bago, email ko. Anong buksan ko, halos wala nag-email. Mag-email pag may bills, di ba? Pag may babayaran, and then the like. But right now, every day, parang I've been receiving 10 to 20 or more than 20 emails pa. Diba? So that's of course the new normal, diba? Kaya nga sabi nila, mediated communication. Of course, we talk about mediated communication. Indeed, it's prone to a lot of problems, lalo na pag hindi pa tayo sanay. Okay? Tandaan po natin, communication is a very complex process. That's why at any stage of this process, okay, things may go wrong, making the communication process less effective. So in other words, if we want to be effective communicators, and if we want to ensure that the way we communicate with our students will be effective, then we must be able to minimize and avoid the things that make it less effective. Ano po ba yung mga bagay na yun? Of course, these things are what we call the communication barriers. Okay? And these communication barriers are also known as noise. So sa mga nagtuturo ng oral communication dyan, this is something that is familiar to you already. Okay? So we talk about noise, it refers to the technical term used to refer to all the possible barriers to effective communication. It may be physical, psychological, physiological, or even semantic. So looking at this picture, ayan, makikita po natin. Sa una, of course, nagtatakip ng tenga, right? So it means semantic noise. It means physical noise. Ako, this is very common, di ba? Minsan nagtuturo tayo, tapos habang nagtuturo, biglang tatahol yung aso. Di ba? Nagtuturo tayo, biglang may dadaan naman, nag-jeep sa labas, ang lakas ng tunog. Di ba? Minsan nagtuturo tayo, may malakas na boses sa labas, right? So, of course, not only sa part natin, but also sa part ng estudyante natin. That's why it's very important for us to be able to look for a learning environment, of course, conducive for learning. Also, of course, for our learners. Because we have to avoid this kind of noise. Second, of course, physiological noise. Kung napansin mo, dyan po, sakit ang tiyan, di ba? So, in other words, things that we actually experience from time to time that would hinder us from being able to focus to what we do, to our lesson specifically. Third would be semantic noise, di ba? Hindi tayo nagkakaintindihan, magkaiba tayo ng language. Ako, it was, I think, the other day when someone talked to me, sabi niya, alam mo, sir, ang hirap pala, no? Sabi ko, why? Because she has students from another country. So, nag-online teaching sila. Then, nagkataon ng subject ng Filipino. Sabi nung estudyante niya, so, ma'am, sabi na kasi babae yung teacher, sabi nung estudyante niya, ma'am, do you have subtitles in Zoom? Kasi nga, the student is having a hard time trying to understand what the teacher is actually saying. But since that is a Filipino class, of course, hindi naman pwedeng mag-shift ng English palagi si teacher or lagi magkaroon ng translation, mauubos ang oras, right? So that's also something, of course, that some of us are facing. And lastly, of course, would have to be psychological noise, right? So for us to better understand, there's a specific types of noise. Kasi mahalaga po ito eh. Kung gusto natin magkaroon ng magandang connection sa mga bata, dapat marunong tayo makipag-communicate. And for us to be able to learn how to communicate with them, we must also understand, or it is equally important for us to understand how to avoid the things also that would destroy us, that would destroy, that would destroy the process of communication, okay, or that would hinder us from being able to establish an effective communication with them. So first, again, just like what I told you, would have to be the physical noise. So talk about the physical noise, again, it comes from the learning environment. So not only sa part ni teacher but also sa part ng students. That's why nauso ngayon 'di ba yung mga noise cancelling application or yung mga noise cancelling na yung mga headset na may noise cancellation kasi nga para at least hindi masyado maririnig yung ingay. Sila may mga teachers for example, habang nagtuturo sila may nagbibideo okay sa kabila or kung ikaw naman estudyante for example, habang nakikinig ka kay teacher, hirap na hirap ka nang intindihin yung math. Tapos, biglang sa labas, maririnig mo may nag-aaway. So, of course, these things would hinder you from being able, of course, to participate effectively and, of course, learn the topic for that specific day. So, examples of physical noise would be extraneous noise, white noise, unbearable weather, destructive visual aid, etc. Minsan, pag umuulan ng malakas, ang hirap na, ang umihina ni signal natin, tas yung tunog pa ng ulan. So, of course, that also affects us. Second, of course, would have to be psychological noise. Again, it originates from the emotional state, mental state, or psychological makeup of a person. So, minsan, di ba, of course, ngayong pandemic, this is something that's inevitable. Some of our students, or even us, di ba, we may be experiencing emotional breakdown, burnout, for example. Some of us may be experiencing depression, anger, suspicions, paranoia, biases, and the like. And these things, of course, would hinder us from giving our 100% attention to our teachers or to our students as well. Okay? Third, of course, is physiological noise. These are bodily conditions that compromise the ability of a person to send or to receive messages. Ngayon na online setup, maraming bata, minsan 7 o'clock ang klase, gigising yan 6:55. So, minsan hindi na sila nakakain. So, dahil hindi nakakain, nagbigay si teacher ng exam. That also, of course, affects their score. Why? Because itong state na to, itong physiological noise na to, of course, would hinder us, I would hinder them, rather, from being able, of course, to exert their best effort. So, mahalaga din po, of course, lalo na in designing our class schedule, mahalaga din that we give them health breaks from time to time so that they will be able, of course, to address their needs as well. And of course, the last one, just like what I mentioned to you earlier, would have to be semantic noise. So semantic noise refers to anything related to the meaning of words that distorts or masks a message and confuses the listener. So for example, speakers use a foreign language, listeners limited vocabulary, and then the like. That is why, my dear teachers, it is very important to use also the language of your students, but not to the point naman na hindi na natin sila kakausapin na, of course, intellectually. But what I mean is that we have to avoid using highfalutin terms. Because remember, this is not a spelling bee. It's not a matter of making your students feel, ang galing ni sir mag-English. But it's a matter of making your students feel, ang galing ni sir magturo kasi naiintindihan ko siya. Hindi yung tipo, ang galing niya mag-English pero hindi ko siya naiintindihan. Of course, we're going to choose the comment na masasabi nila na naiintindihan nila yung tinuturo ni teacher. Okay? Because that's what we need. We do not need the compliment na sabihin nila, ay, kabisado ni sir yung dictionary. Walking dictionary si sir. No. Because remember, in education, if your students cannot understand you, then you cannot call yourself a good teacher. Alright? So again, how do we overcome these communication barriers? Some comments. One, make sure that the room is quiet and well lit. Okay? Mahalaga po yan. That's why kami, for example, kami sa UST, nagkakaroon pa kami ng training sa mga bata. We also try to communicate to the parents to ensure that they know the importance of having a conducive learning environment. Kasi ba nasa school, hawak natin. Alam natin kung paano natin mabibigyan sila ng setup na makapokus sila. But sa bahay, syempre wala tayong hawak dyan, right? If they're not going to, of course, allot a space for learning, mas mahihirapan po talaga sila na ma-achieve yung academic success. Second, of course, speaking slowly and clearly so that your students can catch up. And ako, for me, maganda na rin na nire-record natin yung lessons natin eh. Because it's inevitable for students not to experience problems with regards to their internet connection from time to time. Talaga nangyayari talaga yan. So of course, for the students who would be missing the session because of the internet connection, at least they would be able to go to the recordings and watch it again. And third, of course, talk using the words that the students are able to understand. So just like what I told you earlier, this is not a spelling bee. It's not a matter of, again, trying to impress them. It's a matter of helping them to learn, to become better, to understand new concepts, to develop new skills, and acquire new knowledge. Right? So another one, of course, would be, it's always two-way. Okay? Communication should always be two-way. If it's one way, then definitely expect a lot of barriers along the a lot of barriers that would of course hinder you to communicate effectively with your students. It must always be two-way. So you have to listen to their feedback. Kapag may problema, of course, address them. Kapag wala, good. Kapag meron, of course, address them. Right? So remember, my dear teachers, the most important way to overcome the communication barriers and to avoid communication breakdown is by getting regular feedback from the receivers. And this time, who are our receivers? Is our students. Alam niyo po, this is my observation sa mga kwento ng kaibigan ko. Although, in my cases, it's not really something that I experience often. Pero ang napapansin ko po, sa mga nakakwento sa akin ng mga, of course, sa teaching community, di ba? Maliit lang naman ang teaching community. The students right now are still not used to the setup. And their scores would actually show it. Yes, we're only focusing on the most essential learning competencies, but that does not mean that they would be able to understand it easier. Diba? Bakit po? Kasi nga, it's an online setup. And even if we call them Generation C, of course, that have in its skills in terms of using technology, is still, they're on the process of adjusting. So, napakahalaga ng feedback na para at least alam natin kung paano natin i-improve yung ginagawa natin, alam natin paano natin i-address yung kanilang pangangailangan at yung kanilang kagustuhan din. Remember, my dear teachers, it is not just important for you to be able to address what they need, but it is also important for you to be able to address the learner's preferences, especially when it comes, of course, to teaching. Okay? So, now, allow me to present to you some principles of speech delivery. Diba? And then after this, of course, I'll go to the rapport na po. Okay? So again, principles of speech delivery, we have 6. 1, we have modulation, articulation, stage presence, facial expressions, gestures and movements, and of course, rapport. So let me start first with modulation. Okay? So when I talk about modulation, it means to change the sound of the voice by making it higher or lower. It means to adjust so that it exists in a balanced or proper amount. Okay? And always remember that no one likes to listen to high-pitched, shrill, or squeaky voice. Alam niyo po ako, meron akong kilalang teacher. Okay? He's very, ano kasi siya kumbaga talagang very expressive. So, especially when teaching literature, talagang mararamdaman mo talaga yung drama. If it's sad, it's sad. If it's sobrang animated talaga siya. And to be honest, it helps. If you will be able to talk to his students would always tell you, ako sa akin, sir, naiintindihan ko agad yung sinasabi ni sir because it's not just about reading it, but it's also about listening to how he's going to utter the lines, express his, for example, opinion about the specific topic, and then the like. So, in other words, the way we speak, okay, it also contributes to the learning of our students. Okay? If we want to communicate effectively din, lalong-lalo na po sa online, di ba, na prone to misinterpretation, then dapat, of course, we know how to modulate our voice. Okay? One, let's say, for example, baka sinasabi natin, nagagalit pala tayo. Tapos nakangiti tayo, o kaya yung boses natin walang emosyon, o kaya, for example, natutuwa tayo we're praising them, we're trying to appreciate them. Tapos ang mukha mo malungkot, tapos ang pagkakasabi mo, very good. Diba? So, of course, the students would feel, parang, the students would feel that, right? So, it's something also that we have to learn. Another thing, of course, voice modulation helps us sustain the attention of the audience. Okay? So, kapag monotonous tayo, the tendency is that we would be losing our audience attention. But if we are not monotonous, if we know how to modulate our voice well, then of course we have to expect that our students would be able to listen to us for a longer period of time. All right. Second would be stage presence. Okay. So it refers to the ability to command an audience with an impressive style of manner. Okay. So have stage presence by grooming, by dressing, and speaking well. My dear teachers, ang stage presence po, of course, hindi natin talaga yan kagaya ng boses natin na namomodulate. Diba? It is something that our students would feel upon seeing us. So, ways, of course, on how to be able to establish a good stage presence. One, the way we look. Alam ko po, ilang buwan na tong quarantine, pero dapat po matuto pa rin tayo magpagupit, lalo sa mga lalaki. Diba? If we teach them, of course, good grooming, then dapat ganun din tayo. Second, of course, how we dress. Hindi pwedeng makasando lang tayo o hindi pwedeng naka-t-shirt lang tayo habang tinuturuan natin sila. Okay? So of course, we must wear something that would show them, okay, our teacher is here to teach us. Our teacher is here to help us learn and not to do anything not connected to education. And of course, the way we speak. Baka mamaya, for example, during the time that we're talking to them, mali-mali ang grammar natin, hindi na halatang hindi natin alam yung sinasabi natin, halatang kinakabahan tayo. Of course, it would give us a negative stage presence. So if we want, of course, to our students, of course, to understand, okay, our teacher is here, I must listen because he is here to teach. He is here to help us learn. Then we have to understand how that stage presence is something that we have to develop. All right. So the question is how do we really establish stage presence? Just like what I told you earlier, you should sound good. Hindi pwedeng hindi pwedeng pangit, 'di ba? Ang boses natin na masakit sa tenga or parang halatang kinakabahan tayo or halatang hindi natin alam yung sinasabi natin and then the like. Okay? Also, of course, ang investment talaga natin ngayon bukod sa mga laptops, yung mga headphones, yung mga gamit na magagamit pa natin, of course, to ensure that our students would be able to listen to us better. Kasi baka mamaya, for example, hindi nila tayo naiintindihan and then the like. Okay? Second, of course, your command of the language must be excellent. Just like what I told you, if you say, for example, your grammar is poor, then expect that your students would not be able to, kumbaga, not only understand what you're trying to say, but also try, kumbaga, parang yung feeling na, ay, magaling tong teacher. Walang ganon. Hindi may isip na bata yun because grammar is something that all of us should know and develop. Diba? Dapat marunong tayo mag-speak ng Tagalog at ng first ng English, especially, of course, the medium of instruction that we use in teaching our respective subjects. Okay? And third, of course, have an extensive knowledge about the topic in order for you to sound credible. By the teachers, we have to understand that one of the most important things in the field of education, especially for us teachers, is credibility. If our students would think that we're not credible and that we do not know what we're trying to say, then definitely, ano mangyayari? Our students would not believe us anymore. So dapat po, before tayo pumasok sa klase, dapat alam natin yung sinasabi natin. Hindi rin po pwedeng copy-pasted, ha? Kasi pag kinopy-paste natin yan, di ba, dami kong nakikita ang videos ngayon, sinasabi parang ang teacher sobrang strict sa pagbibigay ng, sa pag-check ng plagiarism, pero the teachers themselves are already doing a lot of copy-pasting. Right? Nakakalungkot po, pero totoo. Next, of course, another principle would be facial expression. So this gesture is executed using the facial muscles, and your face reveals a lot about you. Sabi nga nila, di ba, it's the strongest, the most beautiful, di ba, and the most effective visual aid, di ba? And of course, it's what you don't say that counts the most at times. So, minsan yung mukha pa lang natin, di ba? The students would feel, ay, minsan parang for example, naka-on yung camera mo bago ka magbigay ng PowerPoint. Good morning! Yung mukha mo pa lang na maaliwalas, it would make them feel, Sir Corcuera is very happy to see us. And if the students would feel that way, then of course, they would be feeling that way too. Na parang, ay, Sir Corcuera is happy to see us, so I'm happy to see him too. Right? So napakahalaga po that we try to invest also hindi lang sa microphone but also on the webcam. Minsan kasi yung mga laptop, minsan malabo ang camera, di ba? So para makita naman po tayo ng mga estudyante natin. Bilhin din tayo for example ng webcam. Ito yung mga investment talaga natin eh. Kaya of course, but these things would really help us educate our students better. Third, of course, would be gestures. The gestures refers to the movements or positions of the hand, the arm, the body, the head, or the face that is expressive of an idea, opinion, or emotion. Di ba minsan automatic tayo ng kamay natin parang antena yan na kinukuha na natin ng signal, right? So these gestures, of course, help us communicate our ideas and emphasizing our words. So simply, for example, first, okay, second, what happened after that? Yung mga gestures natin na yan, it also affects, it also allows our students to learn better. Okay? However, too much gestures may distract your audience from trying to decipher or understand your message. So wag naman pong sobra, hindi naman tayo sumasayaw, di ba? So just enough. I mean, express the gestures in a natural way. Hindi naman yung tipong scripted. Mahalata din po ng bata yan. Next, of course, would be articulation. So for articulation, it is an act or process of putting something into words, and it refers to the clear and accurate pronunciation of words. Okay? In a speech delivery, it mainly talks about the logical order of ideas expressed. So mahalagang mahalaga din po, of course, sa kanina sinabi ko na rin sa modulation yun, okay? How we're going to pronounce the words, okay? We have to, ako pag hindi ko talaga alam ang pronunciation, I would always consult the online dictionary and listen to the pronunciation so that my students would not be, one, yung iba dyan maniniwalang ganun ang tama di ba? Two, of course, baka mamaya alam din nila na ito yung tama at mali ako. Siyempre, it of course kumbaga parang makes me not credible in their eyes. So dapat mo talaga alamin natin, 'di ba? So that everything of course would be kumbaga explained to them correctly. And in speech delivery with regards to the logical order of ideas, kaya dapat din po of course there would be no awkward pauses. The connection from one lesson or from one slide to another would be smooth. Okay? So of course these things also affect the learning and of course the communication process that occurs between the teachers and their students. And lastly, of course, would be the rapport. Ito yung ating magiging focus. Okay? So the rapport refers to the speaker's connection with the audience. And it is characterized by harmony, conformity, and accord or affinity. So in other words, it refers to the relationship that we have to our students. Okay? In distance learning, teachers emphasize that rapport is necessary. Okay? Although, of course, hindi na to face-to-face, mahalaga pa rin po talaga yung rapport. Why? Because it is still important for us teachers to establish some sort of personal connection. Ay otherwise, it's like teaching a bunch of little computers. Diba? Meron naman pong emosyon ng mga estudyante natin. So, meron din tayo. Ako nga, I have friends who are also teaching. Sabi nila, alam mo pa na ganito yung pag na ganito ang nagtagal ang pagtuturo na online learning, parang susukuan ko ang pagtuturo, sabi nila. Sabi ko, why? And then they were telling me, kasi they don't feel the satisfaction that they receive in a face-to-face classroom. Which is true. Ako nararanasan ko rin naman po yun. But then I realized, siguro I just lack connection or we lack connection with our students. Kasi nga, it's online learning setup. So of course, we're still adjusting. We're still trying to look for the best combination. Okay? Remember, my dear teachers, that getting to know students individually is important. And of course, that includes knowing how they think, understanding how they work, identifying what their personalities are, what they can handle, and what they cannot handle. Alright? So again, bakit po mahalaga na magkaroon tayo ng rapport? Because it is the key to creating a positive and supportive online classroom environment. And of course, a positive online environment, okay? So a supportive online classroom environment, ito magiging dahilan ng mga bata bakit sila papasok sa eskwelahan. Right? In fact, in a research conducted by Murphy and Rodriguez Manzanares in 2008, sabi nila, in a study of 15 high school distance education teachers, okay, these researchers found that because of a lack of visual cues and physical presence in this form of learning, teacher compensated by deliberate rapport building. Then that only shows why rapport is very important. Okay? Kasi po pag may rapport tayo sa klase, the students would feel that more comfortable. If we have rapport with our students, the learners would become more motivated to participate more during our class discussions, to submit their deadline, to comply with the deadlines and submit their requirements. And lastly, of course, if the students have rapport with us, establish natin yung connection na yun, we have to expect that the students keep coming back for more. Right? Furthermore, let me share some other research papers, journals that would really prove to us why rapport is very important in distance education. Okay? According to Benson, Cohen, and Busquets in 2005, okay, their study found that classes where teachers established rapport were more likely to attend class, pay attention, and enjoy the subject matter. Di ba dito po sa online learning, hindi naman isang room ang pinapasukan ng bata. Unlike in the face-to-face, pag pumasok sila, lalabas na yan last period na or recess, lunch break, or pamunti CR. But in an online learning setup, they have to log in from one virtual classroom to another. So those things, of course, you have to understand, sabi nga sa study na to, if yung mga teachers na walang rapport sa estudyante, ito yung mga klase hindi pinapasukan. But yung mga teachers na may connection na maganda sa mga bata, ito yung mga klase na very participative ang bata, very excited, very enthusiastic na pumasok ang bata. Another study linked rapport with enhanced learning, attention, okay, motivation, attendance, and involvement for students. For faculty, they link rapport with more rewarding teaching and higher ratings and, of course, evaluation. So this was from Granis, Kornig, and Harrich in 2009. So not surprisingly, of course, given these outcomes, these three authors, okay, concluded that one of the key traits of a master teacher, of a good teacher, of an effective teacher, is having the ability to foster student rapport. No wonder, of course, these teachers are given higher evaluation for the job well done. Okay? Another study found that instructor rapport uh, emerged as a significant predictor of cognitive and effective learning. So this one, of course, was found naman po by Frisbee and Martin in 2010. So in other words, it's not just for cognitive learning, but it's also, of course, for affective learning. Yung emotions, of course, napakahalaga yan. Yung domain na yan, napakahalaga yan. If we wouldn't be able, of course, to touch that, lalo na po ngayon na talagang the students also are having mental breakdown, emotional breakdown. So the more that we have to build and establish a good connection with them. Right? So now allow me to show to you a diagram showing what rapport is in a specific research. Sabi dito, rapport is a dyadic phenomenon, okay, that involves mutual attentiveness, mutual respect, mutual understanding, mutual openness. Okay? It's also a dyadic phenomenon that involves coordinated interaction, coordinated movement, that is positive, harmonious, smooth, and regular. So this diagram only shows, okay, that with rapport, okay, communication would always be, kumbaga, the chances of having an effective communication would always be high. Even if this is, of course, being produced through mediated communication. Kahit pa sabihin natin, for example, we're using different machines, different products of technology, if you have rapport with your audience, if you have, for example, a connection with your students, okay, and then expect things, of course, to be, kumbaga, the chances of having academic success would be indeed higher. Okay? So rapport in distance education. All right. So the four elements in messages were indicated by the following. Sabi dito, reporting on or requesting information on personal information, ideas, opinions, and emotions. Thanking, complaining, apologizing, or engaging in personal discussions were also considered as indicators of rapport. So all these things are based from a study conducted by Jones, Warren, and Robertson in 2009. They studied rapport in a context of an online text-based communication, of course, which means that, of course, the audience, okay, are currently that time, of course, using online learning environment. So here, dito pa lang po makikita na natin eh, diba, that rapport, okay, could not just be seen doon sa ating pagkipag-usap sa bata sa pag-deliver ng lessons. Because even in the way we talk to them, like for example, we thank them, they will be complaining, they would be apologizing, we would be engaging in personal discussions. Lahat po to, of course, indicators to ng rapport. So that's why later po, of course, I progress during our webinar today, you would be able to see, okay, the different indicators of rapport, of course, in distance education. So, yeah. So again, another study mentioned that the earlier weeks in the course represent a critical period for the type of student interaction that will lead to rapport. So this was, of course, coming from Jones, Warren, and Robertson in 2009. Teachers, ito po, napakahalaga po ito. Kasi po, kapag ang goal natin is to establish rapport during the third quarter, naku po, medyo mahihirapan na tayo. Baka nga hindi na po natin kayanin. So it must be done on an earlier stage. For example, during the first 2 or first 3 weeks of classes, napakahalaga po nun. Because yung first impression natin sa bata is something also that's very important. If the students would feel na ikaw yung teacher na walang makakasundong estudyante, then it would be very hard for you to establish a rapport with them. But if the students would feel that you're the kind of teacher who is really there for them, then of course the students would really exert their best effort to understand you and of course know you even more. In particular, face-to-face meetings early in the course, di ba, help us develop a critical communication mass that possibly supports the development of rapport. And of course, this is the same way that is being implemented online. Ganun din po. Kung sa face-to-face, napakahalaga ng first 2 weeks, first 3 weeks natin, ganun din po sa online learning. Pero let's say, for example, sir, paano yun? During the first quarter, patapos na yung first quarter, hindi talaga ako nag-online learning. Talagang nagbibigay lang ako ng videos, that's it. Then I think you should, kumaga, double their effort talaga para the students would feel that you're also trying to do their best to establish a good connection, a good relationship with them. Right? So, now, the question is, what are the challenges to rapport building? Diba? Earlier, I've been talking about the importance of rapport. I've been talking about what rapport is. Pero ang tanong is, ano ba yung mga challenges na that, of course, rapport poses to us? One, when I talk about rapport, some distance education students don't want to have any interactions. May mga bata kasi na parang iniisip, okay, on distance education naman to, hindi ko nakausapin si teacher. Right? So, compared to the face-to-face setup, mararamdaman ng bata doon na parang party obligation nila to talk to the teacher. But in an online learning setup, they would be thinking, so some of them would be thinking, online naman to, so I can do this on my own. Diba? Lalo na kung talagang puro asynchronous learning si teacher, right? So, some students also may not want to be contacted, diba? Or even us teachers, baka naman tayo rin teachers, ayaw natin ng interaction with our students. But then again, just like what I told you earlier, online learning is always two-way. Dapat po talaga, we have to allot time to communicate with our students. Hindi pwedeng puro video lang, hindi pwedeng puro module lang, hindi pwedeng puro instructions lang, letter lang, PowerPoint lang, and then the like. We always have to, of course, have an intellectual discourse with our students from time to time. And second would be, a lot of things can be misinterpreted online. Okay? You have to be very careful with what you say. Because as teachers, we might be saying things na joke sa atin. But for them, because hindi nila naiintindihan yung humor natin, they would not see it as a joke. Okay? And because of those things, it could lead to misinterpretation. Kasi nga, di ba, pag online po, kumbaga, minsan talaga, or kahit present ang non-verbal kapag may video, ang tendency, minsan na misinterpret ka pa din. Kaya nga ako po, for example, if my students, for example, have questions, I really try to create a virtual classroom. I would answer it there. Not unless simple questions that I can answer in chat. Pero kapag, for example, medyo complicated yung tanong, hindi ko pipilitin sagutin sa chat. I would try to create a virtual classroom where I will call him para at least mas magkaintindihan kami. Because I understand that online communication is something that we're not used to pa. So, of course, prone to misinterpretation. Right? Number 3 would be, some distance education teachers think that online learning should be done without any direct contact to the students. Ayan po yung sinasabi ko kanina. Hindi po talaga sapat yun. Okay, so meron nga po ako nabasa, parang sabi modules, dapat kahit sa modules daw from time to time, nagkakaroon ng interaction. Although of course, I would understand that not everyone would be able to do this. Kasi nga po, talaga yung iba naman, talagang very challenged talaga in terms of course, trying to communicate with the students kasi walang internet, walang, for example, walang phone, wala talagang means of communication. But of course, I hope we would be able to find solution to this thing. Same thing with the students, of course. Perception is still there, just like the old times, na iniisip nila. Di ba, sa dati po kasi, pag sinabing modular, module talaga. Pag sinabing online, online is parang online, pero parang may pipindutin ka lang, sasagutan mo lang from time to time, kung kailan ka libre, and then the like. But online learning right now is not that, is not being done that way. It gives premium to, of course, communication. So, napakahalaga, of course, na mabigyan natin ng oras din talaga na makausap yung mga estudyante natin from time to time. Synchronous classes din. Huwag tayo puro asynchronous. Alright? So now, let's go to the biggest question. How do we establish rapport? So allow me to give some tips, and then after that, I'll give you indicators kung may rapport na talaga kayo sa mga bata. Alright? Number 1, take time to greet and make them feel that you're glad speaking in front of them. Start the class by telling them, I'm happy to see, I'm glad na, for example, it's a complete attendance, that right now, all of you were able to attend. It makes me really happy and the like. So, make them feel that they're important and that their presence to your class is indeed something that you value. I mean, it's something that you really value, okay? Second, of course, compliment on their effort, attention, cooperation, and appearance. No matter how simple these things are, you have to compliment it. You have to compliment them. For example, sumagot sila, compliment mo rin mo, okay, that's a good answer, right? medyo mali, pwede mong sabihin, that's okay. I think you have a point there, although I'm looking for a different idea. But yeah, I see where you're coming from. So recognize their answers, okay? So that they would feel na, ay, ang ganda palang sumagot. I have, I know someone, okay, sabi niya nagkwento siya sa akin, student ito, student ng, I mean, college student, na yung sabi niya, siya daw ayaw na raw niyang sumagot ng tanong ni teacher. Sabi ko, bakit? Kasi when she tried to answer one of the questions given by their teacher, parang kinorek siya. Tapos nung kinorek siya, parang medyo pinagtawanan siya. So what happened after that? That student is a consistent honor student. Right now, running for Latin honors. Sabi niya, ayoko na mag-resign kasi parang feeling ko, mapapahiya lang ako. So that's something that we must not do online, because if we want to establish rapport with our students, then we must always remember that we have to understand na hindi rin mas madali para intindihin sa kanila yung lesson. So recognize their effort, okay, compliment it. Third, of course, involve the audience by interacting with them. Ako po, whenever I'm being asked, what makes good teaching? I always tell student-centered. Never kong sinabi na, okay, it's about you being knowledgeable alone. No? You have to be knowledgeable, but it should be student-centered. It should not be like this one, itong webinar na I'm talking to you, I'm presenting all the information. Okay? The student themselves must be able, of course, to devise a way, okay, to look for this information, of course, based from the activity that you're going to provide them. Right? And next, ito napakahirap po. Ako, to be honest, hirap na hirap pa rin ako dito. Maintain eye contact with them. Ang hirap kasi sabi ko parang, for example, right now, the camera, nasa bandang taas ng monitor ko, and then yung PowerPoint nasa gilid. So what would I try to look? Of course, I would look at the PowerPoint. Di ba? So, but of course, time to time, we must still try our best to still establish eye contact with our students. Okay? Next, of course, always smile and be energetic. Sabi nga nila, di ba, ang teachers talagang best actors and best actresses, right? So even if you're very tired, even if you're really exhausted, still, when you're facing them, always smile, always make them feel that you're happy to see them, and that you're very energetic, you're very animated, of course, to be with them. Okay? Also, add fun icebreakers and other activities. Do not just allot the synchronous time for the lecture proper, for the discussion proper. You also have to create motivational activities from time to time. Ako nga, everyday talagang may icebreaker kami so that other students would enjoy also what they're trying to do. Kumbaga, hindi yung tipong, klase na naman, ang toxic na naman. The students would think, klase, mag-enjoy na naman ako dito. They would look forward, of course, to attend their class. Next, let your students get to know you back. So, wag niyong ipagdamot na makilala kayo ng mga estudyante niyo. But of course, dapat may wall. Hindi naman pwedeng ibigay mo na lahat. Diba? So, of course, your students must at least know more about you. Okay? Para at least alam din nila kung ano yung hindi nila dapat gawin at hindi nila pwedeng gawin. Right? So, again, praise your students as much as possible. Give compliments from time to time. That is very important. Of course, help your students outside the classroom. Lalo na po ngayon. Ako po, let me share one practice na ginagawa ko with my students. Okay, with my advisory class, I really try my best to meet them outside the class schedule. So minsan, for example, I would set virtual meeting, one-on-one session. Kinakamusta ko lang, kamusta ka naman? Magkikwento sila, nahihirapan sila sa ganito, sa ganyan. The students would feel, ay concerned sa akin si sir. So kung concerned sa akin si sir, dapat concerned din ako sa sarili ko. Sir is doing his part for me to have a better, better performance. That dapat ako as student, I should also be doing my part to deliver a better performance in class. Right? So mahalaga din po yun kasi the students must also feel din na talagang we're still here for them. Although we cannot meet them face to face, but virtually we're still here for them. Right? So next, of course, use appropriate tasteful humor. Ingat po tayo sa mga jokes na binibitawan natin. We might be offending them. Okay? Kasi hindi rin natin sila nakikita. Diba? We cannot require them, lahat kayo mag-camera. And kahit lahat sila mag-camera, hindi mo naman sila makikita ng sabay-sabay, just like in a usual, typical brick and mortar classroom setup. Right? So mag-ingat din po tayo sa mga binibitawan nating biro. Baka mamaya, instead of us being able to get their attention, it makes them feel bad about us or about what we're actually trying to say. Okay, talk to them like a friend, but always be polite to them. Okay? So talk to them like a friend. You're here for them. You're here to listen to them. That they can count on you. Okay, they can try to message you. Let's say, for example, they're having problems. Kasi ngayon, for example, yung problema sa bahay din ng mga bata, hindi na nila may iwasan na maapektuhan sila. Lalo na nasa bahay lang din sila habang nag-aaral. Di ba, before nga, for example, there were some students na bully. Tapos pag dinala mo yung history, kaya pala bully kasi sa bahay, nagkakaroon ng problema. So sa school nila nilalabas. But right now, that of course, their homes, their houses, are their schools as well. So the more that we have to understand their specific situation. Okay? And that's why we have to learn about our learners. Okay? We have to learn about our learners. Okay? By asking them specific questions. Mahalaga po yun. From time to time, hindi lang po English, hindi lang po math, science, AP, TLE ang tanong natin. Dapat po we also ask questions. Nakamusahin lang natin sila from time to time. Okay? Remember, education is not all about academic skills. It's also about forming them, helping them to create and to establish a strong character inculcated with positive morals and virtues. Okay? Next, of course, as teachers, we have to be organized. Kasi kung ang klase natin hindi rin organized, I'm telling you, hindi ka rin maka-establish ng rapport kahit pa you're trying your best to kumbaga, lend a hand pa sa kanila. Start your course or program with a welcome greeting. Okay, from time to time. Okay? Parang for example, webinar, meron kang opening spiel, pag mag-close ka, mag-thank you ka, that's the same thing that you do. Ako po, I always start my class pa rin with a prayer and my class with a prayer as well and thank them that they were able to attend the class. Okay? Next, keep all due dates and promises. Ako po, my students would know that I'm very strict when it comes to deadlines. Okay? Pag sinabi kong Monday, is a Monday. So, pero pag nakikita ko talaga, lalo na ngayon, pag nakikita ko medyo nag-aalangan ako sa date, I always try to extend deadlines. Kaya lang yung ibang bata, parang may mga impression na parang, si sir pa bago-bago ng deadline. Yung iba natutuwa kasi na-extend, yung iba hindi natutuwa kasi, of course, napoprolong yung agony nila. Right? So, it's something also that you have to know. Kumbaga, kailan ka pwede mag-extend at kailan ka hindi pwede mag-extend. But of course, discipline your students. Even if this is online, it is very important that the students would know the importance, of course, of punctuality, and of course, of submitting on time and the like. Like kung sinasabi sa kanila, kapag nagtatrabaho na kayo at hiningi ng boss niyan, hindi nyo pwedeng sabihin na nawalan kayo ng internet. Di ba? So that's something that you have to understand. But of course, pero ngayon, syempre, pag nawala na ito, wala tayong magagawa. We have to, of course, kumbaga, that's a very valid reason. Extend the deadline. But there's still process. Pakita nyo sa kanila where you're trying to be strict when it comes to the due dates. Alright? Baka kasi hindi nila maintindihan, sir, nahihilo pa ako, tinatamad pa ako. Yung iba naman, bata, ginagamit lang din talaga yung internet as a reason. We have to face the reality. Some students are having good connection but are trying to use that reason for their late submission. Nakakalungkot man, pero totoo. Follow up promptly. Napakahalaga po from time to time. Okay? You cannot expect them to understand things clearly ng mabilisan kagaya sa face-to-face setup. In an online learning setup, napakahalaga po, of course, that you try to make follow-ups and that you try to, of course, guide them along the way in making the specific task that they're actually having. And lastly, of course, use chat rooms, threaded discussions, journals, etc. to communicate with them. Okay? So marami po tayong paraan para makausap ang mga estudyante natin. I think most of the private schools, we have our own learning management systems. Sa VIBAL, meron tinatawag na V-Smart, LMS at V-Smart School. Okay, so yan, ginagamit din yan. Itong ginagamit natin ngayon, YouTube, for example, Zoom, and then the like. So these are all different video conferencing applications that we can use to effectively communicate with our students. Another one, ako po, this is my practice. I always try to use emojis. Ako po, my students would know, or my former students would know, that I really don't allow them to use emojis, especially for their papers, especially in answering questions, and then the like. Pag sinabi ko black and white, it should be formal. Okay? Pero ngayon po, as an example, we're chatting in the chat box. I really try my best to use emojis so that my students would feel na, ay, okay, ang ano pala ni sir, na parang happy naman siya, may smiley face naman. So, of course, it's also a way of trying to make them feel lighter. Na parang, okay, pero not to the point naman na final paper tapos may emoji. Siyempre, they should know when or when not to use it. So, it's something also that you can use in your classes, at least because emojis express our emotions, di ba? So it's a way of trying to, kumbaga parang at least tell them how we feel about what they're doing, right? Although we have to understand also, okay, that it's still better if we would be using our own hand gestures and facial expression. Okay, because these things support more naturalistic communication, similar to that of the face-to-face interactions. So if we can still use our cameras, of course, to express our language, out to express, I mean to show, to tell them, deliver them the message that we have, okay, together with our non-verbal expressions, that's always better. Dahil guys, sabi ko nga po kanina, it's more relatable, more similar to the naturalistic communication na ginagawa natin before nung pwede pang online. Right? So, there you go. Now, so what are the indicators of rapport in distance education? So, for the indicators, dito natin malalaman if you're already able to establish rapport with our students. Number one, recognizing the person or the individual. So here, if we're done, for example, at least eliciting personal information with, of course, respect to Data Privacy Act. Okay? If we know how to express our personality and if we know how to acknowledge the person, then automatically may check na po tayo dito. Okay? Second is supporting and motivating. Okay? Here, if we know how to support our students, monitor them from time to time, praise them, may praise their work, compliment them, and of course, provide feedback from time to time, then check na rin po tayo dito. So these are the things that would show us that we are already able to establish rapport, of course, with them. Third would be availability, accessibility, and responsiveness. Here, it's a matter of us being available for them. Alam niyo po, ito challenge talaga to no? Kapag online learning, ang available ka dapat 24/7, di ba? Minsan kasi may mga bata, for example, hindi may iwasan, mag-message siya gabi. Kaya nga minsan pag gabi, you have to message them, I noticed that you're working late at night. May I know why? Eh, ibang bata pala, for example, sobrang exhausted sila sa umaga dahil sa online learning, so nakakatulog. So minsan, of course, ako, I try my best to answer their queries. But of course, I also try my best to make them understand that I also have another life. Hindi lang ako pwede 24/7 na sasagot ang tanong nila. So, that's why I always tell them, if you would be messaging me, I will do my best to reply. But if I cannot reply, then you have to understand that I'm also doing other things. Right? And second, of course, is a matter of trying to respond to them quickly. Okay, kaya ako, kahit sinasabi ko sa kanilang, okay lang na mag-message kayo, but then you cannot expect me to reply quickly. Pero pag nagbigay ako ng oras, for example, sinabi ko, asynchronous time tayo ngayon, 10 to 12, I would really try my best to reply to all their messages. Okay? Hindi lang sa reply sa messages, also in trying to provide their feedback. Then kailangan from time to time, mabigyan din natin na bibigay sa kanila. So it's also a way of establishing rapport with them. Okay? Number 4 would be non-based interactions. Here, of course, hearing each other, may seeing each other, okay, interacting in real time, face-to-face. Although ito, imposible ito ngayon, di ba? So, although may mga ibang schools, parang ang practice nila, they give modules, but they conduct online classes. But the modules are being delivered to specific schools parang every 2 weeks or every 3 weeks. So kahit pa paano, nakikita si teacher at si parent, or minsan sinasama si student, although bawal pa talaga yun, di ba? So, kaya lang sabi, mga bata talagang matitigas ang ulo. Right? So, yeah, so this is something, of course, that would also indicate na may rapport. Pero again po, let's not encourage this because this is something, of course, that is not really advisable. Kasi nga po, sabi ko nga sa inyo, online distance learning, full online po yun. Hindi natin kailangan makita yung mga bata. Siguro kahit virtually yun. Pero hindi naman ibig sabihin, kailangan talaga face-to-face. Alright? Next is tone of interaction. So being friendly. Okay? So pagkausap natin sa kanila, pagkausap natin sila, yung friendly tone natin, yung being humorous, like being respectful and being honest, this also help us, of course, establish rapport, a good connection, a good relationship with our students. So kailangan po, hindi tayo pwedeng palaging formal at hindi rin naman tayo pwedeng palaging very informal. Right? So, kailangan mixture. Respectful ka, at of course, honest ka, humorous ka, friendly yung tone mo. Yung mararamdaman nila na they're welcome. Hindi yung tipo mararamdaman nila na, okay, hindi ako pwede magsalita, bawal magkamali dito, and then the like, right? Next, of course, last would be the non-academic conversations or the interactions. Here, of course, dito po papasok yung pagkipag-usap natin sa kanila socially. Okay? Which, of course, would not always be about academics. Minsan, for example, you try to talk to them, kamusta sila, for example, with regards to the pandemic, lalo na yung mga bata, for example, who are experiencing depression, emotional breakdown. It's very important that they would really feel that their teachers are really here for them. Kasi yun po yung mga bagay na magpaparamdam sa kanila na parang, my teacher right now is not just here for academics. My teacher right now is not just here to help me learn the skills, the academic skills, but my teacher is here because she wants to help me, because she loves me, she cares for me. Right? So dapat ganun yung maramdaman ng bata, because definitely, if you would be able to make the students feel that way, 100%, you would be able to establish a good rapport, even, of course, only having interactions virtually. Right? So in other words, to summarize everything that I talk about today, rapport is a challenge and is an opportunity for us to make our students, I mean, rather, yeah, to make our students better individuals, okay? To help our students increase their chances of gaining academic success. It's going to be a challenge because it's not really easy, but it's going to be an opportunity as well, because if we're able to establish it, then definitely things would be a lot easier than, of course, it used to be. All right. So again, the golden rule: treat your students, of course, not as, kumbaga, robots, but treat them as individuals who also have emotions. All right. So I hope sana po may natutunan po tayo today in our session. Okay, so if you have questions, you can message me, okay, in my email po, jcorcuera@vibalgroup.com. But of course, I think today will also be entertaining some queries, then of course from our viewers. I hope may naintindihan po tayo today with regards to the importance of rapport, how we can establish rapport, how we can establish a better way of communicating with our students, a better way of establishing connection with them. Because again, let me just reiterate, these things would surely help us become the best teachers, become the most effective teachers in the eyes of our students. Thank you po for watching.
Thank you very much, Sir Joram. Now we'll proceed to the question and answer portion po. The first one is from Miss Jean L. Aquino. What are the best or top tips on how to adopt teacher-student rapport while teaching online?
Okay. Yun po. While teaching online, just like what I mentioned to you, thank you for that question, by the way, Miss Michelle. And yun, nung nagtanong, I forgot the name, sorry. Again po, in teaching online, gaya po ng sinabi ko sa inyo, yung mga tips po na binigay ko po kanina, mahalaga po yun. Pero siguro, one of the things ako talaga personally na nararamdaman kong helpful is really to use emojis, di ba? Parang to use specific examples that would really try to, kumbaga, parang it would be able to hit the emotions of the students, okay? Because the students must feel that you're one with them, that you're not here to make things harder for them. Okay? So, yun ko po yung mga bagay na yun na parang mas kilala din natin dapat sila, hindi lang sa loob ng klase, kundi sa labas ng klase. We also try to understand where they're coming from. Even, for example, academic task, kunwari, nagbigay na schedule tayo ng exam. They would ask for an extension, for a postponement, for example. We have to also understand where they're coming from. Baka naman mamaya, for example, talagang sobrang valid din naman yung mga reasons. So, yung mga bagay po na yun, parang as long as the students would feel that we are here with them, that we are here for them rather, along the way on the process of learning virtually, I think we would be able, of course, to help them talaga po. And of course, through these things, you would be able to establish a good connection and rapport with them. Ayun po.
Thank you so much, sir. Next po is from Miss Merly Sassis. Sir, how to establish rapport to parents that are less fortunate or low?
Ayun po, ako po, sa parents po, one of the practice po, siguro na pwede kong i-share sa inyo. Ako po kasi I really talk to the parents of my students from time to time. Since last year po, lalo na nung nagkaroon na ng online learning, meron akong group chat for the parents na walang estudyante, ako lang, ang teacher, tapos all parents. And then of course the students, and then ako din. So why did I create that GC? Because the parents also need to be reminded kung ano din po yung mga pinagdadaanan ng bata sa eskwelahan. Para at least alam din nila. Kasi di ba, sa mga videos na makikita natin online, marami nagkasabi, paano daw sila mag-online learning kung inuutusan daw sila ng nanay nila. So yung mga bagay po na yun, of course, it's very important also that the parents would know, okay, this time it's really for learning. Sa ganitong panahon pala, may exam pala yung mga bata. Sa ganitong panahon pala, may mga bagay pala na kailangan gawin ng bata and then the like. Also, of course, sa less fortunate, I'm assuming, ito din yung mga bata, for example, na kunwari, let's say for example, modular sila kasi wala talagang means to go online. So it would, ako aminado ko, it would really be hard. But of course, trying to at least extend your best effort to communicate with them from time to time would be helpful for them to understand that that right now their role in, of course, the education of their children is also important. Kasi to be honest, ang halaga po ng parent teacher student relationship ngayon, yung tatlong yon, mahalaga po talaga to ensure that we will be able to have academic success. Ayun po.
Thank you, sir. And for our last question po is from Mr. Nestle Godino. Sa pag-establish ng rapport, which is more effective po, online learning or face-to-face?
Ako po, of course, I would choose the latter. It's always face to face. Diba? I mean, I think let's not talk about the obvious. It's always face to face. Kaya lang po, sabi ko nga po kanina, unfortunately, we don't have an option. Diba? Pero ako, I always believe that it's really face to face. Okay? Why face to face? Kasi ako, mahilig ako after class. Oh, for example, minsan iba yung behavior niya, you stay. I will talk to that kid. Lalo na pag sa umpisa pa lang, ako masakit sa ulo. Talagang kikilalanin ko yan, mas maintindihan ko kung ano ang ugali niya, saan siya nanggagaling, and then the like. So unlike in an online learning setup, ang hirap din makita sino ang problematic, sino ang hindi. Dahil technically, wala namang maingay dyan kasi nakamute naman ng mga microphone ng mga yan. You cannot conduct a class with their microphones on. Kasi, syempre, paano kunwari, bawat ingay sa mga bahay-bahay, hindi na tayo magkakaintindihan. So, di mo rin malalaman. Of course, it's hard to monitor this. It's harder to monitor them online. So I'd really pick the latter, face to face. For me, when it comes to face communication, everything is much easier. But then again, gaya ng sinabi ko kanina, this is online learning, so we don't have a choice. But I always believe that even if we don't have an option, we can still make things possible. Just like how we do things, of course. Nung panahon na we're doing it in a brick and mortar setup. Ayun po.
Thank you, sir. That's all the questions we have for now. Do you have any last reminders for our viewer this afternoon po?
Last reminder po siguro, just a simple message that although right now, indeed, we are clearly in the midst of a tragedy that touches every corner of the planet, but still, we have to understand, we have to remember, and we have to always keep ourselves talagang positive, diba? That positive mindset tayo. So this time can be a learning opportunity for our community of adult learners and educators. And of course, sana po talaga we will exert our best effort, okay, to show that our students, the 21st century learners, okay, na talagang ma-realize talaga nila that online learning is meant for them. Okay? Kasi ako, to be honest, right now, I think, if you're going to ask me what's the biggest hindrance to the success of online learning, I think it's the kind of mentality that online learning cannot work for us. A lot of researchers already proved that it's possible for us to deliver things online. So if napatunayan to ng research page ng maraming research papers, then I'd like to believe that it's really possible. It's just that we have to exert more effort to find the right combination to make things work for us and for our students. Ayun lang po. Thank you po for watching. Salamat po. I hope may natutunan po tayo in our session today. God bless po and stay safe.
There we have it. On behalf of VIBAL Group Incorporated, I would like to thank you, Sir Joram, for being our speaker this afternoon for this inspiring and insightful learning session. It is truly an honor to have you with us today, sir. And to all our Kavibal viewers, all thanks to you for your continuous patronage to our daily learning session. We encourage you to subscribe and watch on our official Vibal Facebook and YouTube channel. Muli maraming salamat at magandang araw sa ating lahat.